My mother-in-law handed me a designer belt at our anniversary dinner, smirking like she'd won some twisted game. Everyone stared, waiting for me to crumble. But when I opened that box, my billionaire husband stood up, and what happened next made her face turn ghost white. This is my story. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. I promise you, this story has more twists than a roller coaster, and if you click away, you'll regret it. Seriously, what happens in the next 30 minutes will leave you speechless. Now let me take you back to where my nightmare began. My name is Nora, and if you had told me 3 years ago that I would be standing in a mansion wearing a burgundy dress worth more than my childhood home, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? Sometimes those curveballs come with private jets and designer clothes, and sometimes they come with a mother-in-law who makes the devil look like a saint. Let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a tiny apartment on the wrong side of town. My mom worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on and food on our table. I remember nights when she would come home so exhausted that she'd fall asleep still wearing her work uniform. She cleaned offices, waited tables, and did whatever it took to give me a chance at something better. When I was 19, she passed away from a heart attack. The doctors said it was stress and exhaustion. I said it was a broken system that works people to death. After she died, I was alone, completely alone. I put myself through community college and eventually landed a job as an assistant curator at a small museum downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I loved being surrounded by art and history, by things that lasted longer than human lifetimes. It made my problems feel smaller somehow. I never cared about money or status. I just wanted to live a quiet, meaningful life. I wanted to make my mom proud. Then I met Adrian Lancaster at a charity gala the museum was hosting. I was working that night, making sure the catering ran smoothly and the donors were happy. He approached me near a Renaissance painting, asked me about the artist. Most rich people at those events didn't even look at the art, but Adrian seemed genuinely interested. We talked for hours. He was different from what I expected. Kind, thoughtful. He didn't talk about money or business. He asked me about my dreams, my favorite books, what made me laugh. We started dating, and for 6 months it was like living in a fairy tale. He never flaunted his wealth. We went to small cafes, walked through parks, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. I loved him. That was all that mattered. But here's the thing nobody tells you about fairy tales. They always leave out the part where you have to deal with the witch. The day Adrian told me his last name was Lancaster, as in the Lancaster Hotel Empire, my stomach dropped. I'm talking about a family that owned luxury hotels in 30 countries, a family whose net worth had more zeros than I could count. And suddenly, I understood why Adrian had been so careful about keeping that world separate from ours. My mother is complicated, he told me one evening, his jaw tight with tension. She's never approved of anyone I've dated. But Nora, I need you to understand something. She's going to try to break us. She's going to test you in ways that will make you want to run. But I'm asking you to trust me. Can you do that? I looked into his eyes and saw something that scared me. Not doubt about his feelings for me, but genuine fear about what his mother was capable of. How bad could it be? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. His expression darkened. Worse than you can imagine. We got married quickly, a small ceremony with just a few friends. Margaret, my new mother-in-law, refused to attend. Instead, she sent a message through Adrian's father. Tell your son he'll regret this. Not congratulations, not best wishes, a threat. That should have been my first clue to run. The first time I met Margaret Lancaster face-to-face was at a family dinner 2 weeks after the wedding. The Lancaster estate was enormous, the kind of place you see in magazines but never imagine actually existing. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, paintings that probably belonged in museums. I wore my nicest dress, a simple cream-colored one that Adrian had said looked beautiful on me. Margaret opened the door herself. She was tall, elegant, with perfectly styled gray hair and cold blue eyes that scanned me from head to toe like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. "So you're the girl," she said, not "welcome to the family" or "nice to meet you," just "the girl." Dinner was a nightmare. Margaret served everyone at the table except me. When I politely asked if I had missed something, she smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, I thought you'd prefer eating in the kitchen with the staff." "Isn't that what you're used to?" Adrian's face went red with anger, but before he could speak, Margaret had already moved on, asking his father about some business matter. Halfway through the meal, Margaret reached across the table for the wine bottle and somehow, miraculously, knocked her entire glass of red wine directly onto my dress. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I'm so clumsy." "That dress is ruined." "Well, it wasn't expensive anyway, was it?" I sat there with wine soaking through to my skin, humiliation burning my cheeks, while she dabbed at the tablecloth and apologized to everyone except me. But that was just the beginning. Margaret had a gift for cruelty that was almost artistic in its precision. She knew exactly how to cut without leaving visible scars. At every family gathering, she would introduce me to guests as Adrian's current situation, with a little laugh that made it clear she expected me to be temporary. She kept photos of Adrian's ex-girlfriend, Sophia Monroe, displayed prominently throughout the house. Sophia came from old money, the kind of family that summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. "Sophia was such a lovely girl," Margaret would say loudly whenever I was in earshot. "So refined, so educated. She went to Yale, you know." "Where did you go to school again, Nora?" "Oh, that's right, community college." She said community college the way most people say sewage treatment plant. The worst part was watching it affect the rest of the family. Adrian's sister, Caroline, started avoiding me at gatherings. She'd believed Margaret's poison about me being a gold digger who had trapped her brother. Adrian's father, George, was a heavy drinker who mostly stayed silent during these encounters, but once, just once, he pulled me aside at a Christmas party and whispered, "Get out while you still can, girl. This family destroys everything good that comes near it." His breath smelled like whiskey and regret. Adrian tried to defend me, but Margaret was clever. Whenever he confronted her, she would immediately play the victim. "I'm just trying to help her fit in," she'd say with tears in her eyes. "I know she doesn't come from our world, and I want to guide her." "Why are you being so cruel to me? I'm your mother." And somehow, Adrian would end up comforting her while I stood there feeling like the villain. Then things started getting genuinely scary. My clothes began disappearing from the house. At first I thought I was just being forgetful, but then entire outfits vanished. Family photo albums that included pictures of me would be found with my face scratched out. I started receiving anonymous letters at the house. They were typed, untraceable, and they all said the same thing in different ways. "You don't belong here. Leave before it's too late. You'll never be one of them." I tried to tell Adrian, but Margaret had gotten to him first. She had started suggesting to him privately that I wasn't mentally stable. "I'm worried about her," I overheard her tell him one day. "She seems paranoid, anxious. Maybe the pressure of this lifestyle is too much for her. Perhaps she needs professional help." She said it with such concern, such motherly worry, that even I almost believed her. Adrian started looking at me differently, not with suspicion exactly, but with concern, with doubt. He would ask me gently if I was feeling okay, if I wanted to talk to someone. And I realized with growing horror that Margaret's plan was working. She was gaslighting me, isolating me, making everyone think I was unstable. I felt like I was losing my mind. But the real twist came when Sophia entered the picture again. Margaret started inviting her to family-only dinners. Sophia would show up looking perfect, greeting me with fake sweetness while touching Adrian's arm just a little too familiarly. "It's so good to see you again," she'd say to him, her voice dripping with shared history. One day, I found an old phone of Adrian's that Margaret had conveniently left sitting on a table where I'd find it. When I opened it, there were text messages between Adrian and Sophia from a few months earlier. They seemed romantic, intimate. "I miss you," one from Sophia read. "Things were so much simpler with us." I confronted Adrian with shaking hands and tears streaming down my face. He looked genuinely shocked. "Nora, she was texting me, but I barely responded. I didn't want to upset you by telling you she was reaching out, so I just ignored her. I should have told you. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him." But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Margaret knew it. I saw her watching us argue from the hallway, a small, satisfied smile on her lips. What I didn't know was that Margaret and Sophia had been meeting for lunch every week. They had been planning something together, something that would destroy me completely. I would find that out later, in the most devastating way possible. A week before our 3rd anniversary, something strange happened. Margaret's entire demeanor toward me changed overnight. She called me on the phone, her voice warm and apologetic. "Nora, darling, I've been absolutely horrible to you. I see that now. I was jealous, protective of my son, but I was wrong. You make Adrian happy, and that's what matters. Please, let me make it up to you. Let me host your anniversary party. I want to do this for you both." Adrian was suspicious. I could see it in his eyes, but I wanted so badly to believe that people could change, that maybe Margaret had finally seen the light. "Maybe she means it," I told him. "Maybe she's finally accepting me." "I don't trust her," he said flatly. "Something feels wrong." But I convinced him to give her a chance. God, I was so stupid. Margaret took me shopping, bought me the burgundy dress I wore to the party. We had coffee together, and she told me stories about Adrian as a child. She seemed so genuine, so motherly, that I actually felt myself relaxing around her. "I have a special surprise for you at the dinner," she told me with a warm smile. "Something that will show everyone how much you mean to this family." The night before the party, I received one final anonymous letter. This one was different. It said, "Tomorrow, everyone will see who you really are." I didn't sleep that night. Something in my gut screamed that this was a trap. Caroline, Adrian's sister, pulled me aside that morning. "Nora, I don't trust her. I overheard Mother on the phone last night, and she sounded too happy, too excited. Please be careful tonight." But it was too late to back out. The party was happening. When we arrived at the estate that evening, my heart sank. There weren't 50 guests like we'd planned. There were over 80 people there. Every important family in the city, every business partner, every society columnist. The kind of crowd where your reputation could be made or destroyed in a single evening. Margaret greeted me at the door with a warm hug that felt like a snake coiling around its prey. "You look beautiful, darling," she said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Sophia was there too, wearing a stunning silver gown, looking like she belonged in a way I never would. Adrian was tense beside me. He kept checking his phone, his jaw clenched. George was already drinking heavily, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The whole evening felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. Dinner was served. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect. Margaret stood up to give a toast, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son Adrian and his wife Nora's anniversary," she began, her voice warm and gracious. "Marriage is such a beautiful institution. It requires trust, compatibility, and a proper foundation." She paused, and I felt the temperature in the room drop. "Some people are naturally suited for this life. They're born understanding the responsibilities, the standards, the expectations. Others," she looked directly at me, "require more guidance." She gestured to a server who brought out a large gift box wrapped in expensive paper. "Nora, dear, I got you something special. Something to help you hold things together." My hands shook as I opened the box. Inside was a designer belt, Hermes, probably worth thousands of dollars. There was a card attached. Margaret insisted I read it aloud. "For holding up what's falling apart." The room went completely silent. Then nervous laughter rippled through some of the guests. I felt my face burning with humiliation, but Margaret wasn't done, not even close. "And since we're being honest tonight," she continued, her voice taking on a sharp edge, "I think everyone deserves to know the truth about who they're associating with." A projector screen lowered behind her. My stomach turned to ice. Photos appeared on the screen, photos of the rundown apartment building where I grew up. Photos of my mother in her cleaning uniform, scrubbing floors. Photos of me in my thrift store clothes, working at the museum. Margaret had hired someone to dig up every detail of my past and was now displaying it like evidence in a trial. "This is where Nora comes from," Margaret announced. "A world so far removed from ours that she had to scheme and manipulate her way into our family, and Adrian, my darling boy, fell for it completely." I couldn't breathe. 80 pairs of eyes were staring at me, some with pity, some with disgust, some with cruel amusement. I wanted to run, to disappear, to die right there on the spot. But Margaret still had one final blow to deliver. "And Adrian, sweetheart, I think you should know something else." She pulled out what looked like a medical document. "Nora is pregnant. She's been pregnant for 2 months and hasn't told you. She trapped you, just like I warned you she would. She planned this from the very beginning." The room exploded with gasps and whispers, but the worst part was the lie. I wasn't pregnant. I had no idea where she got that fake document, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. "That's not true." I stood up, my voice breaking. "I'm not pregnant." "This is insane." Margaret's smile was triumphant. "Of course you'd deny it now. But the evidence doesn't lie, dear." I looked at Adrian, tears pouring down my face, silently begging him to believe me. His face was unreadable, frozen in shock. This was it. This was the moment Margaret had been building toward. She had destroyed me in front of everyone who mattered. I was finished. Then Adrian stood up slowly. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. He picked up the belt from the table, examined it carefully, his face still giving away nothing. He walked toward his mother, and I saw Margaret's smile widen. She thought she'd won. "Mother," Adrian said, his voice so cold it could freeze fire, "you've made a terrible mistake." Margaret's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Did you really think I didn't know?" Adrian pulled out his phone and connected it to the projector. "Did you think I was stupid enough not to see what you were doing?" What appeared on the screen next made my jaw drop. Photos of Margaret and Sophia meeting at cafes, at restaurants, their heads close together in conspiracy. Then audio began playing through the speakers. Margaret's voice recorded, "We need to break them up before the 3-year mark. Once they hit 3 years, the prenup terms change. We need to destroy her credibility first, make him doubt her sanity, then deliver the final blow at a public event." Sophia's voice, "And you'll make sure I'm there when he leaves her? I want to be the one he turns to." Margaret, "Of course, darling. You should have been my daughter-in-law from the beginning." The recording continued, detailing every cruel thing they had planned. The stolen clothes, the threatening letters, the forged medical report, everything. The room erupted. Guests were talking over each other, pulling out their phones. Margaret's face had gone completely white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. But Adrian wasn't finished. "I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "when things started disappearing and Nora was receiving threats. I knew something was wrong, and what I found out went far beyond even what I suspected." He pulled up more documents on the screen, and what I saw next shocked me to my core. Everyone here thinks Margaret Lancaster came from old money, that she was born into this world of privilege. But that's a lie. Adrian's voice was steady, factual, devastating. "My mother was born Margaret Hayes, daughter of a factory worker in Ohio. She worked as a waitress when she met my father. She changed her name, invented a background, and spent 35 years pretending to be someone she wasn't." The crowd gasped. Margaret lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but Adrian stepped back. "You hated Nora because she reminded you of yourself," Adrian continued. "Because every time you looked at her, you saw the truth you'd been running from. You weren't protecting me from a gold digger. You were protecting your own lies." George, who had been silent all evening, suddenly stood up. His face was red, whether from alcohol or emotion, I couldn't tell. "He's right," George said, his voice shaking. "I've kept your secret for 35 years, Margaret. I've watched you become more cruel, more bitter, more obsessed with status because you were terrified someone would discover the truth. But I'm done. This ends tonight." Caroline started crying. "Mom, how could you? How could you torture Nora for something you did yourself?" Margaret tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked around the room at all the people she had tried so hard to impress and saw only disgust and betrayal looking back at her. Adrian turned to address the room. 3 months ago, I created a separate trust fund in Nora's name, $50 million. The family estate was transferred to her name last week. My mother's position on the company board has been terminated effective immediately. Her monthly allowance is frozen until she agrees to seek professional psychiatric help. He turned to Sophia, who had been trying to quietly slip toward the exit. "And you, Sophia. Did my mother promise you money to help destroy my marriage? Because I have the bank transfers. You'll be hearing from my lawyers about fraud and conspiracy." Security guards appeared and escorted a protesting Sophia out of the mansion. The sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor echoed through the silent room. Then Adrian did something that made me love him even more. He took my hand and looked into my eyes. "Nora, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the investigation. I needed to gather enough evidence to protect you, but I want everyone here to know something." He turned back to the crowd. "My wife is the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. She loved me before she knew about the money. She stayed with me despite the abuse from my family, and she never, not once, asked for anything except to be treated with basic human decency. That's more than I can say for most people in this room." The crowd didn't know how to react. Some people started clapping awkwardly. Others looked ashamed. The society columnists were typing furiously on their phones, already crafting the scandal that would dominate headlines for weeks. Margaret collapsed into a chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. George announced loudly, "I'm filing for divorce." Tonight. I should have done it 20 years ago. As Adrian led me toward the door, Margaret's voice rang out shrill and desperate. "You'll regret this. All of you. You can't do this to me. I'm Margaret Lancaster. But we were already gone, walking out into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of her own making. 6 months have passed since that night. So much has changed. Margaret did have a complete breakdown and spent 2 months in a psychiatric facility. The divorce from George was finalized quickly. She lost most of her social standing. The people who had once courted her favor now avoided her calls. But here's what surprised me. 4 months after the party, I received a letter from Margaret. A real letter, handwritten, 12 pages long. In it, she confessed everything. The shame she'd felt about her background, the fear of being discovered, the way that fear had twisted into cruelty. She apologized. Truly apologized, for every horrible thing she'd done. She didn't make excuses or ask for forgiveness. She just said she was sorry and that she understood if I never wanted to see her again. I showed the letter to Adrian. He read it in silence, then looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I thought about my mother, about how hard she worked, about how she never let our poverty make her mean. "I want to try," I said. "Not because she deserves it, but because I don't want to become bitter like she did." So we've been taking small steps. Margaret is still in therapy, working through decades of insecurity and self-hatred. We've had coffee twice, awkward and difficult conversations where she's learning to be honest for maybe the first time in her life. It's not perfect. It may never be perfect, but it's something. Caroline and I have become genuinely close. She apologized 100 times for believing her mother's lies about me. George is happier than anyone's seen him in years, dating a kind woman his own age who actually makes him laugh. And Sophia? She fled the city after the fraud charges, though I heard she's working at her father's company now, thoroughly humbled. As for Adrian and me, we renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just the people who really matter. And yes, I'm actually pregnant now. For real this time. We're having a daughter. Margaret asked if she could meet the baby when she arrives. We're still deciding, but I think maybe yes. Because my daughter is going to grow up knowing that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, and that your worth has nothing to do with where you came from. That belt Margaret gave me? I donated it to a charity auction. It sold for $8,000, and the money went to a foundation I started called Second Chances. We help women from modest backgrounds who are entering wealthy families through marriage. We provide legal support, counseling, and a community of people who understand what they're going through, because nobody should have to face what I faced alone. Looking back, I realize that night at the anniversary party was both the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. It was the night I almost lost everything, but it was also the night I discovered just how strong I really am. Margaret tried to break me because she thought I was weak, that I didn't belong. But she was wrong. I didn't need their world. Their world needed more people like me. People who remembered where they came from, people who treated waiters and CEOs with the same respect, people who knew that character matters more than credit cards. My mother would be proud of who I've become. Not because I married money, but because I stayed true to who she raised me to be, even when the whole world was trying to change me. They tried to humiliate me with a belt, tried to make me feel like I needed help holding my life together. But I learned something important that night. I was never falling apart. I was always whole, and no amount of designer leather could have made me any more complete than I already was. Oh my God! Can you believe all those twists? Margaret and Sophia working together, the fake pregnancy, Adrian knowing everything the whole time? This story proves that karma is real and justice does exist. If you loved this wild ride, please hit that like button and smash subscribe because I have so many more incredible stories coming. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Nora should let Margaret meet the baby? Or would you cut her off completely? I want to know what you would do. Share your craziest in-law story below. The most shocking one will be featured in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, never let anyone make you feel small. You are powerful, you are worthy, and you are enough. See you in the next video, and trust me, it's going to be even more dramatic than this one. Bye.